The dust swirled in angry clouds around Rose Harrington's skirts as she stood defiant in the center of Willow Creek, her chin raised despite the whispers that followed her like shadows. It was 1876, and in this unforgiving frontier town nestled in the Colorado Territory, a woman's worth was measured by the children she could bear, and at 23, Rose had become the target of cruel speculation after 2 years of marriage had yielded no children. "There goes the barren one," Mabel Wilson stage whispered to her companion as Rose passed the general store. "Poor Thomas left her for greener pastures. Smart man, if you ask me." Rose clutched her basket tighter, her knuckles whitening. Her husband's abandonment 6 months ago had been a public humiliation, his declaration that he wouldn't waste his life on infertile ground repeated in saloons and sewing circles alike. Though the divorce papers had finally arrived last week, the gossip remained as fresh as spring water. She kept walking, her steps measured and deliberate. Rose had grown up in this town, the daughter of pioneers who'd settled here when she was just a child. They died in a typhoid outbreak 4 years ago, leaving her the small cabin on the edge of town and precious little else. She'd managed to keep herself afloat by selling eggs from her chickens and taking in mending work, but the loneliness cut deeper than poverty ever could. "Miss Harrington," called Mr. Peterson from the doorway of his mercantile. "Your order is ready." Rose nodded gratefully and stepped inside the store, a welcome respite from the scrutiny of the street. The mercantile smelled of coffee beans, leather, and tobacco, comforting scents that reminded her of her father. Mr. Peterson was one of the few townspeople who still treated her with dignity. "That'll be 75 cents for the flour, sugar, and coffee," he said, sliding the brown paper packages across the counter. As Rose reached into her coin purse, the bell above the door jangled. Heavy boots thudded against the wooden floor, and the atmosphere in the small store shifted like a change in barometric pressure before a storm. "Mr. Peterson," came a deep voice that Rose didn't recognize. "Got that fence wire I ordered?" Rose turned slightly, curiosity getting the better of her. The man who'd entered stood well over 6 feet tall, his broad shoulders nearly filling the doorframe. Dust covered his denim trousers, and the dark blue shirt stretched across his chest. His face was partially obscured by a week's worth of stubble and the shadow cast by his wide-brimmed hat, but Rose could make out a strong jaw and eyes the color of summer sky. "Mr. Garrett," Peterson exclaimed. "Didn't expect you for another day or two. Yes, got your wire out back. And some mail came for you yesterday." "Appreciate it," the stranger replied, his gaze shifting to Rose. She quickly looked away, counting out her coins with suddenly clumsy fingers. "You're new to these parts," she said before she could stop herself, then immediately regretted speaking. Strangers rarely stayed in Willow Creek, and fewer still would want an introduction to the town pariah. A hint of a smile curved his mouth. "Not exactly. Bought the old Simmons place about 3 months back. Been fixing it up when I'm not working cattle." He extended a calloused hand. "Adam Garrett." "Rose Harrington," she replied, briefly touching his palm with her fingertips. From outside came the unmistakable cackle of Mabel Wilson. "Lord have mercy, is our barren Rose trying to trap another man? Hasn't she learned her lesson?" Rose's face flamed with humiliation. She gathered her purchases with trembling hands. "Excuse me," she murmured, desperate to escape. Adam Garrett's expression hardened as he glanced toward the window. "Friends of yours?" "Hardly," Rose whispered, moving toward the door. Before she could reach it, the door swung open to reveal Mabel and her constant companion, Harriet Dunn. They tittered behind their gloved hands when they spotted Rose. "Afternoon, ladies," Mr. Peterson greeted them, the tension in his voice evident. "Mr. Peterson?" Mabel nodded, then turned her attention to Rose. "Rose, dear, I was just telling Harriet that my sister in Denver knows a doctor who specializes in feminine ailments. Perhaps you should consult him before you set your cap for another husband." Her smile was vicious. "Wouldn't want another man to waste years only to discover you're as barren as the Badlands." Rose stood frozen, her throat closing up with unshed tears. "Madam," Adam's voice cut through the silence like a knife, "where I come from, it's considered poor manners to discuss another person's private affairs in public." Mabel's eyes widened as she took in the imposing figure of Adam Garrett. "I was merely offering helpful advice to humiliate someone who's done you no harm," Adam finished for her. He stepped closer to Rose, his presence solid and reassuring beside her. "And for your information, there's nothing wrong with Miss Harrington." Rose looked up at him in confusion. Adam's gaze never left Mabel's face as he continued, "She's mine. Has been since we met back east last spring. We've been corresponding since, and I bought that ranch so we'd have a proper place to start our life together." Mabel and Harriet gasped in unison. Rose stared at Adam, completely bewildered by his fabrication. "In fact," Adam continued smoothly, "I was just about to ask Mr. Peterson here to spread the word that we'll be married come Sunday after church services." He turned to Rose, his eyes conveying a silent plea. "Isn't that right, darlin'?" In that moment, Rose made a decision that would alter the course of her life. She smiled up at this stranger who had inexplicably come to her defense. "Yes," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Yes, that's right." The whispers began before Mabel and Harriet had even left the store, clutching each other's arms and practically running to spread the news. Mr. Peterson busied himself with paperwork, tactfully giving them privacy. "Why did you do that?" Rose asked quietly when they were relatively alone. Adam shrugged, removing his hat to reveal thick chestnut hair. "I despise bullies," he said simply, "and I've heard how they talk about you since I came to town. None of it sat right with me. So you invented a courtship and proposed marriage on the spot." Rose couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. "I may have gotten carried away," he admitted with a rueful smile that transformed his face, creating crinkles at the corners of his eyes. "But I meant what I said about bullies. No one deserves to be treated that way." Rose studied him, trying to discern his true intentions. "You do realize you've created quite a predicament. They'll expect us to actually marry now. Would that be so terrible?" His direct gaze made her stomach flutter. "I've been watching you, Rose Harrington. You hold your head high despite everything they say. You're kind to the children who come to your door, even when their mothers forbid them to speak to you. You work hard and ask for nothing." He paused. "I admire that." Rose felt a blush creep up her neck. "You don't know me." "I'd like to," he said simply. "And I meant what I said. I need a wife and you need to silence the gossips. Maybe we could help each other." "A marriage of convenience?" Rose asked, the concept both shocking and strangely appealing. "For now," Adam agreed. "Though I hope it might become more in time." He smiled again, that disarming smile that seemed to bypass all her defenses. "What do you say, Rose Harrington? Will you marry me for real? I promise to be a good husband." Rose took a deep breath, considering the stranger before her. She had nothing to lose and potentially everything to gain. "Yes," she said finally. "I'll marry you, Adam Garrett, but I should warn you." She hesitated, the words catching in her throat. "What they say about me might be true. I might not ever be able to give you children." Adam's expression softened. "Then we'll face that together. But Rose," he added, his voice dropping to ensure only she could hear, "sometimes the fault lies with the man, not the woman. Your former husband was quick to blame you, but the problem might have been his all along." With those words, he offered Rose the first spark of hope she'd felt in years. The marriage of Rose Harrington and Adam Garrett occurred exactly as he'd announced the following Sunday after church services. The entire town turned out, most driven by curiosity rather than genuine goodwill. Rose wore her mother's ivory dress, carefully altered in the scant days before the ceremony. Adam stood tall in a new black suit, his hair freshly trimmed and face clean-shaven for the occasion. Pastor Williams performed the ceremony with appropriate solemnity, and if he was surprised by the hasty arrangement, he showed no sign of it. When Adam kissed his bride, it was gentle but lingering enough to bring color to Rose's cheeks and set the church ladies to whispering behind their prayer books. "Reckon he'll regret this foolishness when she proves as barren with him as she was with Thomas," one woman murmured to another as the newlyweds walked down the aisle. Adam's hearing was sharper than they'd anticipated. He paused beside the pew, his smile pleasant but his eyes cold. "My wife and I would appreciate your prayers for our happiness, madam, not your predictions of our misfortune." The woman had the grace to look embarrassed, as Adam placed Rose's hand in the crook of his arm and continued down the aisle. They departed immediately for Adam's ranch, the Old Simmons place, as locals called it, 5 miles outside of town. It was a modest spread of about 200 acres with a small herd of cattle, several horses, and a sturdy 2-story house that Adam had spent months renovating. As their wagon approached the property, Rose felt equal measures of anxiety and anticipation. She was now the wife of a man she'd known for less than a week, a man who'd married her largely out of pity, though he'd never admit as much. "Welcome home," Adam said as he helped her down from the wagon. He hesitated, then swept her into his arms with surprising gentleness for such a large man. "What are you doing?" Rose gasped, automatically wrapping her arms around his neck to steady herself. "Carrying my bride over the threshold," he replied with a smile. "It's tradition." He pushed open the front door and carried her into a surprisingly comfortable home. The main room held a stone fireplace, a sofa covered in soft leather, 2 reading chairs, and bookshelves lined with volumes that suggested Adam was more educated than the average rancher. A dining table of polished oak sat near a kitchen area that was clean and well organized. "It's lovely," Rose said, genuinely impressed as Adam set her carefully on her feet. "Upstairs are 2 bedrooms and a small study," he explained. "I've prepared the master bedroom for you. I'll take the smaller room until..." He cleared his throat, "until you're comfortable with other arrangements." Rose felt a rush of gratitude for his consideration. "Thank you," she said quietly. Adam nodded, suddenly looking uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. "I should bring in your things and see to the horses." After he left, Rose explored her new home. The kitchen was well stocked, the pantry filled with preserves and staples. Upstairs, she found the master bedroom contained a large 4-poster bed covered with a colorful quilt, a cedar wardrobe, and a dressing table with a mirror. A small vase of wildflowers sat on the bedside table, a thoughtful touch that brought tears to her eyes. The smaller bedroom across the hall had clearly been Adam's until now. His personal items were gone, presumably moved to the study, but the room retained a masculine energy with its dark furniture and simple decor. By the time Adam returned with her trunks, Rose had composed herself and was examining the kitchen. "Are you hungry?" she asked, falling back on practicality in this strange new situation. "Starving," he admitted with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "But I don't expect you to cook on your wedding day." "I'd like to," Rose said firmly. "It will help me feel useful." As she prepared a simple meal of fried chicken, potatoes, and greens, Adam sat at the table and told her about the ranch, how he'd purchased it after years of saving from his work as a cattle driver, how he'd slowly been building his own herd, and his plans for expansion. "I worked the cattle drives from Texas up to Kansas for nearly 10 years, he explained. "Saved every penny I could, always wanted my own place." He glanced around the kitchen. "Though it feels more like a home now that you're here." Rose blushed at the compliment. "How did you learn about me?" "Before the store, I mean. You said you'd been watching me." Adam had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I've been coming into town for supplies every few weeks. I noticed you the first time, hard not to, with your copper hair. Then I started hearing the gossip." His jaw tightened. "It made me angry how they treated you. No evidence, just speculation and cruelty." "Thomas told everyone," Rose said quietly, setting plates on the table. "When he left, said he'd given me 2 years to conceive and I'd failed him." Adam's expression darkened. A real gentleman, announcing such private matters to all and sundry. He was. Rose searched for the right words. He was not a gentle man in any sense. Something in her tone made Adam study her face carefully. "Did he hurt you, Rose?" She turned away, busying herself with the coffee pot. "It doesn't matter now, he's gone." Adam rose and gently turned her to face him. "It matters to me." The tenderness in his voice nearly undid her. "Yes," she whispered. "He had a temper, especially after he'd been drinking." Adam's hands tightened briefly on her shoulders before he consciously relaxed them. "I'm not like that," he said softly. "I want you to know that. I've never struck a woman and I never will, no matter what happens between us." Rose nodded, surprised by how much she already trusted this man she barely knew. I believe you." That night, true to his word, Adam slept in the smaller bedroom while Rose lay awake in the master bedroom, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of her new home, the creak of the house settling, the distant lowing of cattle, and the soft footsteps of her new husband as he checked the property one last time before retiring. The following weeks established a routine. Adam rose before dawn to work the ranch, often with the help of Miguel Sanchez, a young man from a neighboring property who worked for Adam 3 days a week. Rose took charge of the household, cooking, cleaning, and establishing a vegetable garden beside the house. In the evenings, they would sit together in the main room. Sometimes Adam would read aloud from one of his books. He had a particular fondness for Shakespeare and Walt Whitman. Other times they would simply talk, learning each other's histories, preferences, and dreams. Rose discovered that Adam had been orphaned young and raised by an uncle who taught him ranching. He'd fought briefly for the Union during the final year of the Civil War, though he rarely spoke of that time. He was 30 years old, educated primarily through his own reading, and possessed a dry sense of humor that often caught her by surprise. For his part, Adam learned about Rose's childhood in Willow Creek, her love of music, though the family piano had been sold years ago, and her skill with needle and thread. He brought her a sewing machine as a gift one day, hauling it home in the wagon with a proud smile that made her heart flutter. They were building something between them, not quite love yet, but a genuine affection and deepening respect. Adam never pressed for more than Rose was ready to give, but as the weeks passed, she found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, admiring the strength in his hands and the kindness in his eyes. After 2 months of marriage, Rose finally found the courage to broach the subject that had been weighing on her mind. "Adam," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, "about our arrangement. I know we agreed that this was a marriage of convenience, but—" He turned to her, his expression guarded yet hopeful. "Yes, I think perhaps it's time that is, if you still want to." Her cheeks burned with embarrassment despite the cooling evening air. Adam reached over and took her hand. "Rose, are you saying you're ready to be my wife in truth?" She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Yes, if you still want that." "Look at me," he said gently. When she raised her eyes to his, the tenderness she saw there took her breath away. "I've wanted that since the moment I saw you in Peterson's store, but I wanted your trust more. I still do." "You have it," she whispered. That night, Adam came to her bedroom. He was patient and gentle, treating her body with a reverence that Thomas never had. Afterward, as she lay in his arms, Rose felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. "I love you, Rose Garrett," Adam murmured against her hair. She tilted her face up to his, surprised by the words yet knowing they were true for her as well. "And I love you, Adam Garrett." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Then we're the luckiest people in Colorado territory." Their life settled into a new rhythm after that night. Adam still worked from dawn until dusk, but now Rose would often bring him lunch in the fields, and they would share a brief respite together under the shade of a cottonwood tree. She began accompanying him to town for supplies, holding her head high as they walked arm in arm past the gossips who had once made her life miserable. Mabel Wilson still watched with narrowed eyes, clearly waiting for news that Rose had failed to conceive. But with each passing month, Rose found herself caring less about the town's opinion and more about the life she and Adam were building together. 6 months into their marriage, the first signs appeared. Rose missed her monthly cycle, then again the following month. She experienced morning sickness but kept it secret from Adam, not wanting to raise his hopes until she was certain. By the 3rd month, however, there was no denying it. Rose was with child. She prepared a special dinner the night she decided to tell him, setting the table with the good china they rarely used and making his favorite apple pie for dessert. Adam returned from the fields, washing up at the pump outside before coming in to find the table set and Rose wearing her best dress. "What's the occasion?" he asked, kissing her cheek as he always did when he came home. Rose took a deep breath. "I have news." Adam sat down, his expression curious. "Good news, I hope, the best," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Adam, we're going to have a baby, in about 6 months if my calculations are correct. For a moment, he simply stared at her, his face blank with shock. Then, with a whoop that startled Rose, he leapt to his feet and gathered her in his arms, spinning her around the kitchen. "Careful," she laughed, clinging to his shoulders. "I've been feeling rather delicate." He immediately set her down, his hands gentle on her waist. "Are you all right?" "How long have you known? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" The questions tumbled out in his excitement. "I'm fine," she assured him. "I've suspected for a while but wanted to be certain before I told you. I didn't want to disappoint you if I was wrong." Adam's expression sobered. "Rose, you could never disappoint me. Even if we never had children, you've already given me more happiness than I ever expected to find." He placed a hand reverently on her still flat stomach. "This baby is a blessing, but so are you." Tears welled in Rose's eyes. "I never thought this would happen for me, after everything Thomas said." "Thomas was a fool," Adam said firmly, "and wrong about so many things, especially you." He kissed her tenderly. "You, Rose Garrett, are the strongest, most incredible woman I've ever known." As Rose's pregnancy progressed, her body blossomed. The sickness passed, and a healthy glow replaced the pallor that had marked her early months. Adam was attentive to the point of being overprotective, insisting she rest frequently and hiring a local girl to help with the heavier household chores. Word of Rose's condition spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. Some, like Mr. Peterson, offered genuine congratulations when the Garretts came to town. Others, including Mabel Wilson, were visibly taken aback by the evidence of Rose's fertility. "Well," Mabel sniffed when they encountered each other outside the church one Sunday, "I suppose miracles do happen." "Indeed they do, Mrs. Wilson," Adam replied before Rose could speak, "though sometimes what people call miracles are simply the result of being with the right person." He placed a protective hand on Rose's growing belly. "My wife is thriving, as you can see." As her time grew nearer, Rose prepared the smaller bedroom as a nursery. Adam built a cradle from oak, carving intricate patterns of leaves and flowers into the headboard. Rose sewed tiny garments and quilted a blanket of blue and yellow squares. When her labor began on a crisp October morning in 1877, Adam rode frantically for the midwife, Mrs. Abernathy, who lived in town. The older woman arrived with her bag of supplies and immediately took charge, sending Adam to pace the porch while she attended to Rose. The labor was long and difficult. Through the windows, Adam could hear Rose's cries of pain and Mrs. Abernathy's calm instructions. As the sun set and darkness fell, Adam found himself praying fervently for the safety of his wife and child. Just before midnight, a new cry pierced the night, the unmistakable wail of a newborn taking its first breath. Adam froze on the porch, his heart pounding as he waited for Mrs. Abernathy to call him inside. When the door finally opened, the midwife's face was weary but smiling. "Congratulations, Mr. Garrett. You have a healthy daughter." Adam entered the bedroom on shaky legs. Rose lay propped against pillows, her copper hair darkened with sweat and her face pale with exhaustion, but her eyes were radiant as she cradled a small bundle wrapped in the blue and yellow quilt. "Adam," she whispered, "come meet your daughter." He approached the bed with reverence, sitting carefully beside Rose. She pulled back the edge of the blanket to reveal a tiny face, eyes screwed shut and wisps of dark hair, Adam's hair plastered to a perfectly formed head. "She's beautiful," Adam breathed, reaching out a trembling finger to touch his daughter's cheek. "Just like her mother." "Would you like to hold her?" Rose asked. With infinite care, Adam took the small bundle into his arms. The baby squirmed, then settled against his chest as if recognizing her father's heartbeat. In that moment, Adam felt a love so overwhelming it brought tears to his eyes. "What shall we name her?" Rose asked softly. Adam looked from his daughter to his wife, the two miracles he'd never expected to find. "Hope," he said. "Her name is Hope." Rose smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Hope Garrett, it's perfect." Mrs. Abernathy cleared her throat from the doorway. "I'll come back tomorrow to check on mother and child. For now, both need rest." She gave Adam a stern look. "That means you too, Mr. Garrett. The excitement isn't over yet. You've got a lifetime of fatherhood ahead of you." After the midwife left, Adam settled into the chair beside the bed, still holding Hope. "I'll stay right here," he promised Rose. Get some sleep. Rose reached out to squeeze his hand. We did it, she whispered. We made a family. You did the hard part, Adam replied, raising her hand to his lips. You're incredible, Rose. As winter settled over the Colorado territory, the Garrett household adjusted to life with an infant. Hope thrived, growing stronger and more alert with each passing day. She had Adam's dark hair and Rose's green eyes, a combination that both parents agreed was perfect. News of Hope's birth had spread throughout Willow Creek, causing a sensation among those who had once mocked Rose's supposed infertility. Thomas Harrington, Rose's former husband, had even returned to town briefly and was reportedly stunned to learn that his ex-wife had not only remarried but successfully borne a child. He had the nerve to suggest that perhaps you weren't barren after all, just unwilling to have his children, Mr. Peterson reported to Adam during one of their visits to the Mercantile, a protective arm around Rose who held baby Hope close. Adam's jaw tightened. And what did you tell him? Mr. Peterson smiled. I suggested that perhaps the fault had been his all along, and that he might want to leave town before you learned of his return. Wise advice, Adam replied grimly. As Hope's first birthday approached, Rose discovered she was expecting again. This time there was no fear or secrecy, only joy shared immediately with Adam. Another baby, he marveled, holding Rose close as Hope played on a quilt at their feet. I'm the luckiest man alive, Rose smiled up at him. And I'm the luckiest woman. Who would have thought that day in the Mercantile would lead to all this? Adam kissed her forehead. I knew the moment I saw you that you were special, Rose Garrett, standing tall despite everything they said about you. And I knew the moment you stood up for me that you were a good man, Rose replied. Even if I thought you were slightly mad, proposing marriage to a stranger, Adam laughed. Best madness I ever gave into. He glanced down at Hope, who had pulled herself up using his pant leg and was grinning up at her parents. Look at what we've created together. Rose placed a hand on her stomach where their second child was just beginning to grow. A family, she said softly. Something I never thought I'd have. A family, Adam agreed, wrapping his arm around her shoulders and pulling her close. And Rose, they were wrong about you, all of them. You weren't barren, you were waiting for the right soil to plant your seeds. He placed his hand over hers on her belly. And I'm grateful every day that you chose me. As am I, Rose whispered, leaning into his embrace as they watched their daughter discover the world before them, the living proof of their love and of how wrong the gossips of Willow Creek had been. In the years that followed, the Garrett ranch prospered. Hope was joined by a brother, then 2 more sisters. Rose, once pitied and mocked as barren, became known throughout the county for her vibrant family and the love that was evident between her and her husband. And if Mabel Wilson and her friends ever spoke again of Rose's supposed infertility, they did so very quietly indeed. For Adam Garrett's devotion to his wife had become as legendary as the family they had built together, a family born of courage, kindness, and the love of a man who had seen beyond cruel gossip to the incredible woman waiting to be claimed as his own.